How welcome to the show. Great to have you here.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you for inviting me.
So, as part of your recent study, it turns out that sleeping too much may actually be as problematic as sleeping too little. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, definitely. I think, like I mentioned in the work that we published recently in Nature, the public generally knows that if someone sleeps like too few hours, it's going to be detrimental to your overall health. There are a lot of like evidence in the prior like literature. But on the other side, I think one of the surprising finding in our recent work is actually we also found sleeping too much, more than 8 hours, it can also be detrimental to your overall health, but maybe like in a slightly different way. For sleeping too short, we found actually the detrimental effect will be very broad. That will involve like different diseases from the brain, like depression, schizophrenia, or dementia, like Alzheimer's disease. But also this will affect the whole body system, like other diseases, like systemic disease, like diabetes, for example, obesity, for example, and also some cardiovascular risk disorders, etc. But on the other side, we found if someone sleeps too long, the detrimental effect will be very, very like localized, primarily affecting your brain. That's going to be like schizophrenia, like late life depression on the brain. And that's one, and the underlying mechanism is totally different between the sleep too short versus like sleep too long. For sleep too short, that's like broad whole body. I call it like whole body detrimental effects that will be very direct in our mediation analysis. That means sleeping too short will directly affect your disease burden of the overall health, overall organs. But on the other side, for the sleep too long, in this scenario, there will be a mediational pathway, which the aging clocks of the brain and adipose tissues, these two aging clocks will mediate a certain like aging, a certain detrimental effect from sleep too long to the disease. We use like late life depression as an example. So that's basically the two distinctive biological pathway underlying sleep too short versus sleep too long towards like late life depression.
Makes a lot of sense. And I've actually noticed this in people I've met who are suffering depression. They do tend to sleep a long, long time. And I remember coaching someone once, and she said, I get home from work at 7 p.m. I'm in bed by 7:30 p.m. and I wake up at 7 a.m. And she said, I'm getting enough sleep. And I thought, no, actually, you're getting way too much sleep. It's really interesting to notice that it's correlated with depression.
I think that goes back to the question, which is a chicken, which is the egg. At
Yeah.
least for long sleep too long. I think that it, my personal opinion is like it should be a bi-directional relationship. Like you mentioned, if someone got like like depressive disorder episodes, that might lead to longer sleep, not because this might like sleep too long might be a downstream consequence of some already evident like subclinical condition like inflammation, like depressive disorder, etc. And interestingly, I think several years ago there was a novel, a very popular novel, like from a New York writer. I forgot the name. It was during the peer review. One of the reviewer told me actually there was such a novel. A girl gone through a traumatic situation, and
Yeah.
to escape the reality, it took a lot of like the medicine, like to sleep to in order to like sleep long. I
Yeah.
forgot the name of the novel.
I read that novel actually, and it's actually kind of terrifying because she was taking huge amounts of drugs just to sleep. People coming and caring for her, and because she was on so many drugs, she wouldn't remember anything. I'll find it and put it in the show notes for anyone who's interested. But that is very interesting. And then eventually, well, I won't say what happens. I'll let people discover that for themselves. So you mentioned biological aging. A lot of people are now talking about the biological aging clock. What does that actually mean?
Yeah, I think biological aging clock right now it's quite like popular concept in the longevity, like in aging research, because I mean, of course, everybody wants to live longer, extend healthy lifespan. It's a quite like intuitive concept in the machine learning perspective. So basically, it's a regression model
you can put any what we call the imaging like features, machine learning features, and you have the machine learning model. That's going to be a regression model. This could be lasso. This could be linear regression. Very simple. And the feature will be input. Like for example, this could be brain volume, hippocampal volume, frontal lobe like volume from as the population level. Let's see, we have 100 people from this patient cohort, and we extract those imaging features, brain MRI scan from different brain volume regions, and we fit those volume features into a regression model, and to predict the chronological age or the calendar age of those 100 people. And this machine learning model will give you some AI, what we call machine learning or AI predict age. And of course, your machine learning model will not perform like perfectly, because this the difference between the AI predict age versus like your true age, the calendar age. This is defined what we call like biological aging clocks. And this could be a negative, positive value. That means your brain, because in this sense, it's the brain MRI, right? So your brain biological aging clocks looks 5 years older than your true age if the aging clock is 5. On the other side, if it's -5, that means your brain looks younger, 5 years younger than your true age. And if this could also be 0, that means, okay, your biological age from the biomedical data, it's basically equivalent to your like true age, like calendar age.
Okay. Wow. So, in fact, from a longevity and health span perspective, biological aging is a more important marker than chronological aging.
Definitely, definitely, because the whole concept is actually people definitely biologically we age differently. Even for example, I'm 36 years old, and another, let's say my partner, she's also 36 years old. But if we take the brain MR scan and we quantify those organ specific aging clocks, definitely we will have like different like aging clocks values, because this is related to your whole body like molecular or imaging like macroscopic feature, but also your genetics, also your environmental factors and lifestyle factors. This all affect.
Okay, very interesting. And there are other ways to detect biological aging. I mean, I remember one of my wearables told me that I'm about 5 years younger than my chronological age. Is the best way through brain scans, or are there other measures?
I think that's something I don't think there's a conclusion in the field. There are many ways that you can use to quantify biological aging clocks. Like you mentioned, the brain MR scan is one way. That's called brain age, which has been existing like in the brain field for 2 decades. And there are also like people using like plasma proteomics, plasma metabolomics, those omic techniques that enable you to quantify your molecular biological aging clocks. And they are also
Mhm.
like for example the sleep ring or the watch. They can get like some other wave signals from your body and quantify those aging clocks. And ideally, I think these signals should be complementary, because they capture different aspects of your human, like the person's biology, physiology, etc. And hopefully, that's why I think I would like to see more techniques, more aging clocks from different biomedical data types. And hopefully, this would build a whole person aging clocks from different modality, different organs.
Someone out there is probably inventing that right now, some kind of
I'm
dashboard where
sure.
you
I'm
integrate
sure.
all of your results from the different platforms. So the study we're talking about is called Sleep Chart of Biological Aging Clocks in Middle and Late Life. It appealed to me because I'm definitely in middle life as a 48-year-old. What attracted you to this study, and what attracted you to this type of science?
Yeah, I think there are two motivations from my perspective. The first one is scientific motivation, of course. I have been working in the aging domain like for like since my PhD, like more than 10 years ago. And my group, my lab has been at the frontier using those AI and machine learning to define those biological aging clocks across different organ systems, but also across different omics data types like MRI, like plasma proteomics, plasma metabolomics. And at certain certain point, I have asked myself what's the next step for the biological aging research. And of course, enriching those aging clocks from different biomedical data modalities, that's very like exciting. But on the other side, I really want to see how those aging clocks can be used in the context of modifiable lifestyle factors. That's where sleep has come to the stage, because sleep is the foundation for every aspect of biology, of human biology, and it's so important. So that's where, and the other reason is because sleep is very likely modifiable, right? If we get a good guidance, I think everybody should learn how to manage, how to optimize sleep in general. And the second motivation is kind of like personal. In general, I have a very good sleep habit. I sleep early, like around 10 or 11, around 11, I go to bed, and I have no issue to sleep very quickly, like 20 minutes, fall asleep, and I wake up like 7 or 7:30. So I'm okay with my sleep time. But after I passed like 30 years old, I found it also, I have become like a light sleeper in the sense that I normally woke up one time during the night, even though I mean I can like quickly fall asleep again, but I feel sometimes it affects me, and like to a certain extent. And I also want to understand how sleep might interact with the organ aging clocks from different organs for my personal motivation to better manage like sleep quality.
Sleep is definitely the foundation. I know personally, and in the training programs that I run, that is the most useful section for most people. And we provide some basic tools and tips for, down regulating your nervous system, maybe some breath work, turning down the lights, reducing information consumption. What did you expect to find when you started this study? And was there anything that surprised you?
Yeah, so we started like this study with some assumption and some hypotheses we already know from the previous literature. For example, this U-shaped pattern between aging clocks versus like sleep duration. Previous literature has already shown the brain clocks and the sleep duration has this U-shaped pattern, like sleep too few or sleep too long is equivalently detrimental for your like aging clocks. We want to go one step further to understand whether this U-shaped pattern will be universal across different organ systems. And from our figure one in the paper, we actually proved that this U-shaped pattern is quite coordinated across the whole body systems. And at that point, we realized, okay, the scope of this study goes far beyond the brain. And that's the first time I think in the literature we confirm this U-shaped pattern across different organ system, and also the sweet spot of those, like in the media they call this optimal sleep time. That's where I think I would be very, very careful to call it. People call it like sweet spot for the sleep time. That's acceptable, but I always caution people, you need to put this in the specific context, like in the UK Biobank population, which is enriched for white, like European ancestry, European population, right? Going back to the surprising point is that's where we found, okay, the scope of this study is far beyond the brain. And the second surprising point I would say is for the late life depression mediation analysis. Like you mentioned at the very beginning, that the long sleep duration actually is also detrimental to like late life depression, although there is a mediational pathway mediated by the aging clocks.
People talk about that sweet spot. Of course, there are variations. What do you find? I've seen a lot of noise on social media. People quoting the study and saying, "Okay, we've discovered the optimal zone." What would you recommend for someone out there who's just trying to take a few steps to improve their sleep length?
I think the original Twitter or the original X or LinkedIn post that
Yeah.
you saw my response to that. I think he definitely misunderstood my research finding. I would like to use another example. I think Fox News recently they also reported this study, and another sleep doctor, she's an MD. She gives a very good summary of this study. Basically, like from a machine learner like me, from my perspective, this sweet spot, this range from 6.4 to 7.8 hours per day, that's a population level statistics based on some statistical assumptions, statistical method. So that cannot generalize to everyone. Sleep optimization, sleep is a personalized optimization. So in that sense, I think the doctor, the sleep doctor, quoted like this: we should treat this sweet spot range, our sleep range, as a starting framework, starting guidance framework. But everybody should put your personal overall organ health, overall medical history, conditions, and other factors, lifestyle factors into account to better get yourself how to manage your sleep. For example, I will give a concrete example. If you have some other condition like diseases already, for example, if I have hepatitis B, for example, I would expect like like my hepatic aging clocks might be a little bit higher or compared to the overall population because I have already this condition, right? But this does not mean if I sleep outside of the sweet spot range, I should panic. I don't think you should panic. You should take into account all the medical condition, all the other lifestyle factors to better manage like your sleep habits.
And are there variations by age and by gender? You know, I hear a lot about women in their 40s, 50s really struggling. Sleep becomes a real challenge. Any thoughts around that?
Definitely, I think there is a clear sex differences between like those U-shaped patterns between females and males. And regarding the like sweet spot, I think in general we found women need more like 20 minutes more in general by
Hmm.
average than males to get this lowest aging clock estimation. And that's also, I think this should also be linked to overall like the societal advantage or disadvantage for females. For example, the hormonal change at a certain age of the midlife, and the education, the social economic situation for females versus males. All that plays a factors, and that may potentially explain why in like females the optimal or the sweet spot of females organ aging clocks might need a little bit more like sleep time compared to males.
Do you think that this ties into the fact that females tend to live longer than males? Is there any connection there?
That's another question. I think the current results we found cannot directly link to that. That's sometimes people call like that might be what we call like survival bias because in general we know female live longer than males, and that we cannot control that like that as a covariate in the model because we don't have that information available. But definitely, I think this could be like linked to the overall lifespan between like females and males. That's a very
Hmm.
good observation, I think.
Yeah, yeah, and you wonder if there are other factors in terms of um, strong connections with others, being there with the family. I mean, there must be so many variables that are quite hard to measure in a study that can also influence not just someone's ability to sleep, but also how calm they are during the day, like overall stress.
Definitely. For example, I think another thing I want to mention is also like sleep quality is if it's not more important, I think definitely should be more important than sleep quantity, like the time itself.
Mhm.
For example, in the sleep research, I'm not a clinician for sleep medicine, but I think like the REM, rapid eye movement, this time is also very critical for your sleep quality. And in this study, the sleep measurement, the sleep duration is from the questionnaire based. So it's very subjective. It's not really objective sleep measurements. So future research, I think I would be very interested in linking those aging clocks to more objective sleep measurements.
Mm. And to do that, would you put an aura ring or something similar to each study participant?
That could be an option, but I think I don't think that I think that's very expensive to have participants to get everyone to get an oral like the sleep rain. So
Yeah.
in our field, we have like the actigraphy or the accelerometer, the other like devices to quantify your sleep activity, and that in the UK Biobank that we have that data. But my
Okay.
team has not yet started like analyzing those data.
And in terms of sleep quality, is there an optimal type of rhythm? I've seen many different interpretations and recommendations over the years. You know, it's the 90 minutes deep and 25
Deep
minutes
sleep.
of REM. What does a good night's sleep actually look like?
To be honest, I don't know to the answer to that. And for example, I have the sleep ring, and I bought like at the beginning of this project, I bought it for myself. And I think the more important, definitely, like you mentioned, the deep sleep. I was also told if you have deep sleep for 1 hour and 30 minutes, you will feel very refreshed. And that's actually the experience I got. For example, last night I slept 7 hours, around 7 hours. I got like deep sleep for 1 hour and 20 minutes. I feel quite like refreshed when I woke up in the morning. So I think that goes back to the potential panic if to the public if your sleep time like get outside of the sweet spot range. I think you should not panic in general because the final assessment from you regarding your sleep quality is how you feel when you wake up. Do you feel refreshed or do you feel really, really exhausted after you wake up? Even this might be the cases even after you sleep 10 hours, right? You will feel very exhausted.
And then there's always the risk for some people, not all, but they receive a bad sleep score on their device in the morning. And even if they feel okay, they say today's going to be a bad day because my sleep score said so, which is a problem in itself.
That's another thing. Some people tend not to buy those like Apple Watch or the sleep ring because they don't want get the additional stress to know these scores. This is exactly the same, very similar situation in the Alzheimer's disease research. Like my primary scientific research focus has been on Alzheimer's disease, and in the sporadic Alzheimer's disease, there is a gene called ApoE4. That's the gene which exert very strong effect in the sporadic Alzheimer's disease patients. And of course, right, the current technology, the genotype technology, this will enable us to find out whether a person has this ApoE risk gene or not. And of course, a lot of people at my age, I don't want to know that, right? Because regardless, at my age, I will very unlikely to develop Alzheimer's disease. So I don't want to live the next 20 years by worrying that, oh, one day I will get the disease. First, even you get that risk gene, ApoE4 gene, that does not mean you will develop Alzheimer's disease. It's just compared to the people who do not carry out this gene, the risk of developing this Alzheimer's disease will be slightly higher for you. But that's what I mean. I don't want to know at this stage of my life whether I have that specific gene or not because I don't want to get additional stress. So this could be, it's not the same thing, but it's very similar to the situation to someone to worry
Yeah.
about how many hours I slept like yesterday night.
Yeah. Use it as a tool if it works for you. If it adds to your anxiety, rather don't use it. Just ask yourself the question, how do I feel today? And what did I do yesterday that enabled me to have a good sleep or what, caused me to have a less refreshing rest? It's interesting when you think about the direct influence sleep has on these diseases, or as you mentioned at the beginning, a lot of people think I'll sleep when I'm dead. It's not important, but you can actually track a direct correlation between years and years of lack of sleep or sleep deficit and some of those neurodegenerative conditions.
Yeah, so in the paper, we perform the survival analysis, which with like the UK Biobank follow-ups, the disease diagnosis for almost like 2 decades. And the sleep time is quantified by the baseline, like 20 years ago. And in that way, you know, if you sleep too few, like lower than 6 hours, of course, it's at the population level again, whether at the population level, sleep too few will be linked to future risk of developing, like you mentioned, neurodegenerative disorder like Alzheimer's disease, like Parkinson's disease, for example. I think that's a very strong indication in general that regardless of other alternative pathway, other confounding factors, sleep too few is definitely detrimental to your like future risk of diseases across the whole body.
So it's not obviously not just the brain, but does it result in, you mentioned metabolic issues, obesity? What else is affected by sleep?
I think the most pronounced organ system might be the cardiovascular system, like the heart disease, heart attack, which kind of makes sense. I think if you sleep too few, this will increase the risk for future like diseases of the heart.
Do you think younger people are sleeping less than before? And I ask this because I remember being in my late teens, early 20s. I slept a lot and I felt that I had, I benefited from long sleeps. Of course, there was some partying and things like that. But when I speak to younger audiences, and I know this is just in my own experience, people seem to be on their devices a lot more and later than they used to. And I really worry about young teenagers. My daughter has friends at school. My daughter's 12 and she has friends at school who are already playing on iPads until 10, 11 at night. It's a real challenge for young people.
I think I totally agree with that. Even for me, like I think I'm a little bit obsessed with my own cell phone in general. I mean,
Yeah.
of course, and again, like that's what I mean. Our paper focus on the adulthood from 35 and older, right? So if we had the data for the younger population, I would assume the sweet spot range will shifted. Might be to the left, might be to the right, but I personally tend to believe this will shift to the right side. So people were in general will sleep longer because I also had the same experience when I was young, much younger. My sleep was much longer and I felt like so refreshed when I woke up. And I remember when I woke up in the morning, I forgot the time. I thought it was in the afternoon. And my mom came to my bedroom asking me to have breakfast. I was thinking, I thought it was, we are going to have a dinner because, you know, but after I became older, I never had that feeling. Like had a perfect sleep so that I totally forgot like the time. The situation you mentioned, the obsession with electronic devices like cell phone, iPad, like telephone, TV, I think that's definitely play a role in like developmental of the brain or adolescent period. I don't work specifically on like developmental stage of the childhood or adolescent, but I know there is another data set called ABCD study, which is generated by here in the United States to generate data for the brain MRI scan and the behavior variables, and also they collect those electronic usage like for the electronic devices usage variables to study how those behaviors is linked to like brain function, brain structures in the adolescent.
Do you think there are times in our life when biological aging is increases in speed, or because it doesn't seem like it's linear? It seems like you can do almost anything for the first 35 years and you will recover. It seems, I'm not sure, you can tell me. But then as you hit 40, 45, 50, what you're doing and what you're practicing becomes more and more important.
Definitely. I think in general, like you mentioned, the aging clocks over the lifespan, it's definitely not linear. And there was a previous paper published like 1 or 2 years ago in Nature Aging. They showed there are three aging peaks. I didn't remember the specific age, but it should be around 20, 35, or 50, or basically there are three peaks where in general the age effects are more rapid compared to other period of your lifespan. And like you mentioned, I think in general, when you were much younger, the plasticity of your brain, for example, your brain is like in the stage of development, and the other factor like environmental genetics or the gene environment interaction all plays a role to define how the plasticity of your brain. And when you're getting older, I think the resilience like mechanism, our vulnerability mechanism will play a much bigger role when you are getting older, in my personal opinion.
Besides sleep, is there anything else we can do to keep our brains healthy for as long as possible?
My overall suggestion to the public in general, sleep is definitely very important. It's the basic basis of every aspect of human biology. But we need to put sleep into the big picture, the lifestyle, or what we call exposome. That means actually it's not just, I mean, it's not just that you want to optimize your sleep alone. You want to optimize your overall like lifestyle profile, or exposure profiles. This could include other factors like dietary. You want to eat healthy. This could be also like the social support. You want to, I mean, you need like your family, your friends to emotionally support you. That's very important, especially for adulthood, like when you are getting older. And this could also relate to education. And we have known in the literature, like in general, better educated persons, they have a better resilience regarding other adversary factors in later life, like social isolation, all those things, for example, right? So I think we need to put this into a much big picture. To do sports, for example, exercise, this is super important. For example, even for me, I if I don't do sports for like for 1 week, I feel like mentally I feel something different. And that's very important, I think, in general, to put every good part of your life all together to support a healthy lifespan.
I'm the same. If I'm traveling for work and I can't go to the gym or go for a run or even spend time outdoors, I start to feel very foggy. And there's a direct relationship between, moving the body and a clear mind. And I think people forget about that as well. It's not just one-sided. But on that note, there are many people giving advice on the internet. One of the first times I saw your name pop up was on Brian Johnson's posts. What do you think of this wave of health influencers? Net positive, or what are your thoughts?
I don't want to focus on the specific person, but in
For
general, I
sure.
think, yeah, it's good like to draw people's the public attention, to pay attention like your health lifespan, like healthy aging. I think that's very important. But on the other side, I also feel we need to be cautious when we advocate this in a correct way. Definitely, I don't want, because I'm sure people will, if people see like a post like that, people will panic. Some people, if they don't know the underlying science or statistical method or machine learning methods, they might panic. And I definitely don't want that to be in that case. And for example, that the study again, it's based on the UK population, right? And
Yeah.
that cannot be even translated to a population in New Zealand, for example. And that this population is largely enriched by European ancestry. Those numbers cannot be directly translated to Asian population like Chinese people. So I think that's one caveat or one pitfall that the public should be aware of.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that it's amazing that people are paying attention and starting to prioritize their health, and people like Professor Huberman, and you've got Brian Johnson, and many others. And then, of course, you start to get to the far end of the spectrum where people are taking methylene blue and all kinds of interesting substances. So I'd say use with caution and check the studies. You mentioned machine learning. How is that changing how you conduct studies like this?
Yeah, so machine learning has been the foundation of my research, and again, besides the hype of biological research, right? And AI has been very popular in current like every aspect of our life, and I think that's totally changed how we, as a researcher, how we do research in daily life. And there are good perspective, but also there are the bad ones. The good perspective, definitely for me and for my students, for every researcher, I think it increased like the productivity of our research activity. But on the other side, I think it also poses like challenges regarding the how to correctly use those AI and machine learning in our research. For example, I think right now it's very challenging for me to supervise students because a lot of times I don't know why the results are generated by AI or actually are generated by the students. That's kind of some situation I have been a little bit like struggling in those days.
Yeah, definitely. And people are getting clever with how they shape the what the AI generates, because you can now prompt it to write in a style that's very similar to what your natural style might look like. So it becomes quite interesting. But certainly, it must enable you to analyze images like brain scans and things like that in a way that would be much more difficult for a human.
Definitely. And yeah, exactly. I think if you that's a I think that's an advantage of machine learning. I used to say this, like AI and machine learning can see what we don't see as a human being. And I'm doing medical research. I think that's a very case in medical research because, for example, a brain scan, it's very high dimensional, millions of voxels, and of course, the clinician is the center of all those clinical tasks, like to diagnose all those things, because they have more experience than AI. But sometimes I think AI can see what even the clinician cannot see. But with that being said, I'm not claiming actually AI should be superior or they should perform better than clinician. Instead, I think AI and machine learning should play a complementary role or a supporting role to support the clinician to help like the patients in that sense.
What are you excited about in terms of the longevity field?
In longevity, I think that with the more advanced technology, we are able to, for example, for the plasma proteomics data, and the one we used is from the Olink platform, which can sequence like around 3,000 proteins. But I think more advanced technology like SomaScan, I didn't remember the version, but I heard they can sequence more than 10,000 proteins. And with more, I think with a more advanced technology, we might be at a better position to more precisely quantify biology of the aging and potentially to better understand like the mechanism and the biology of longevity. When we talk about longevity aging, we also need to take into account the diseases. It's not just about lifespan, right? Because we want a healthy lifespan. And
Mhm.
in that sense, take into account all those risk factors is super important.
Do you think there are interventions out there? I've heard about the machine, I forget what it's called, where they run your blood through a UV scanner and filter out pathogens or whatever. Are there interventions that you are interested in personally or as potential, ways to extend our lives?
That might beyond like the scope of my research. As a machine learner person, like my personal interest at this stage, it might be to develop like new AI biomarkers that can better track, better predict disease mortality, better track model like aging itself. I would like to see some prototype or some startup
Mhm.
company down the road which could develop some like very cheap like devices to track, to monitor, to calculate your whole body organ specific aging clocks. And of course that's not the step for intervention per se, right? I would say like in the future potential therapeutics like potential drug development can be made based on those advances.
Yeah. Now you live in New York, which is the known as the city that never sleeps. Any final tips for people who actually have decided, you know what, I want to prioritize sleep? Are there any practical things that you would recommend?
The more important for me as a personal like advice is like to sleep in a very consistent way. I know some people sleep early, some people might sleep later, and also this is related to professionals. This might be also related to cultural differences. I know like there are Spanish people and Greek people, they could even drink coffee after dinner and they can go to sleep. I could never. I
Me
could
too.
never sleep. I never drink coffee after lunch. Otherwise, I could not sleep very well for the night. So I think in general, it's up to everybody's personal choice. Even when I was a PhD student, I have a lot of deadlines for conferences, like due dates. I, as a person, I have the habit to finish things like in advance. Because I don't want to stay overnight to work on my manuscript. In that way, I will feel like a zombie for the following 3 days. So I think that's some advice if I would give to the public. Pay attention to your personal sleep and to try to sleep in a consistent way and do sports, eat healthy, talk with your friends, have social support. That's all those factors play a very important role, I think.
Fantastic. So consistency is key. Going to bed and waking up at a similar time each day.
Exactly. I think right now, for example, I don't need like the clock in the morning to wake me up because I already have the habit to go to bed around 11 p.m., wake up at 7 a.m. So I think that's very important if you have a like consistent habit.
Yeah, yeah. I've managed to get to that point as well. It's 11 and 7, even a few minutes before the alarm, which is set for 7:15, to wake up naturally. And it's actually a perfect rhythm for me. It works. And it's up to each person to discover what works for you, what is your sleep need, get to know yourself. And I really like the idea of, trying to gather lots of evidence. Maybe it's through blood tests, maybe it's through sleep tracking, whatever else you can afford or what you can get. And then hopefully we get some kind of dashboard. If for myself, what I do, and tell me your thoughts on this, I gather all these kinds of variables or this data and I put it into Claude or ChatGPT and say, what do you think? And it gives me some quite interesting insights, but I'm not sure if that's for everyone. What are your thoughts?
Definitely those like large language model, it's very useful to a certain extent. But again, I think the ChatGPT should know your personal background, like
Yeah.
precise like information of your medical like condition history. In that way, this it will provide more reliable diagnostics or information. Otherwise, the hallucination of the
Yeah.
large language model. Otherwise, they will produce some fake information or yeah,
Yeah. It'll people please and tell you what you want to hear.
exactly.
How thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your insights and expertise. If there's any final message you'd like to leave with the audience.
Prioritize your sleep habit based on your personal condition, personal overall health, and try to integrate sleep into the broad picture to your lifestyle and enjoy. At the end of the day, everybody needs to like enjoy our life, and I hope everybody has a very healthy like sleep habit. Yeah, that's all. Thank you
Thank
very
you
much
so
for
much.
inviting me to this.
Yeah, thank you so much, Hal. I really appreciate it. I look forward to staying connected.
Thank you. Bye.